Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to They Said What? My name is Mr. Rod, and this is the podcast where we take the loudest ideas floating around in sports, culture, business, entertainment, and everyday conversations, and we slow them way down just long enough to ask a basic question. Does that even make sense? Today, we're dealing with something that shows up almost every day in the news, and that's polls. Political polls, consumer polls, approval polls, issue polls, social media polls, polls about what voters think, what customers want, what Americans believe, what young people reject, what Christians support, and what society supposedly believes. But here's the real question. Are polls measuring public opinion, or are they actually shaping it? Because when the national media outlet says a new poll shows, a lot of people stop thinking critically. They hear the word poll and they assume it means something factual. But a poll is not a fact. A poll is merely a snapshot. It's a measurement attempt. It's a structured question asked to a selected group of people. That's right, a selected group of people. Interpreted through methodology, weighted by assumptions, and then framed by whomever reports on it. And that framing actually makes a difference because the public often doesn't see the entire poll. We see the headline. We see the percentage. We see the graphic. We see the dramatic panel discussion, but we may not see the sample size, the margin of error, the wording of the actual question, the sponsor of the poll, the demographics of the respondents, or the assumptions used to weight the results. So today we ask, do polls actually inform the public or do they influence the public? Are they a sound way to gauge or are they a convenient way to manipulate the public? The honest answer is sometimes it's both. Polls exist because leaders, institutions, media companies, campaigns, corporations, churches, and organizations all want to know what people are thinking. At their best, polls can help answer some serious questions, like what are people concerned about? What issues are being ignored? How are attitudes changing? Are leaders truly out of touch? Are policies connecting with the people? Are voters engaged or discouraged? Are communities being heard? That's the legitimate purpose of polling, to gather insight from a group of people and use that insight to better understand the larger population. Now, Gallup explains that scientific polling depends heavily on random selection and representative samples. This means that the people selected should reasonably reflect the larger group being studied. But that's where the problem begins because the public often hears the result without understanding how fragile the process can be. A poll can say 52% of Americans believe, but then again, most Americans weren't asked the question. A carefully selected sample was asked a particular question. That sample may be useful, but it's not the same as the whole country speaking. Now, polls are not useless, and done correctly, they have real value. Polls can reveal public concern. Sometimes leaders are surrounded by advisors, donors, insiders, or media voices, and they lose touch with regular people. A good poll can show what citizens, customers, church members, or communities are what they're actually worried about. Polls can expose shifts in culture. Public opinion changes over time, all the time. Polling can show whether or not people are becoming more skeptical, more supportive, more divided, or more fearful, or even more hopeful. Polls can give a voice to people who are not on television because we're not all on television. Everyone doesn't have a platform. Everyone is not invited to speak on national panels. Polling can allow ordinary people to be counted in a broader conversation. Polls can hold leaders and should hold leaders accountable. If elected officials, companies, or institutions claim the public supports something, polls can challenge or confirm that claim. Polls, they can help people make decisions. Campaigns use polls to decide where to spend money. Businesses use polls to understand their customers. Churches and nonprofits use surveys to understand the needs within the community. So polling does have a place. Now, the issue is not whether polls should exist or not. The issue is whether the public understands their limitations. Now, here's where we need to be honest about the cons of polling. Polls, like many things, can be flawed, biased, misused, and weaponized. The sample may not represent the public. So, if the wrong people are reached or certain groups are less likely to respond, the results can be distorted. Non response bias is one of the major problems in modern polling. Now, Gallup notes that weighting is used to correct issues like unequal selection probability and non response, but weighting itself depends primarily on assumptions. So the question can actually shape the answer. A poll can ask, do you support protecting children from harmful content? Or it can ask, do you support government censorship of online content? Now, those may be aimed at the same issue, but they are emotionally different questions. The wording can push people toward a particular response. The sponsor may have an actual agenda. May have? Of course they have. A campaign, advocacy group, corporation, or media outlet may commission a poll not simply to learn public opinion, but to produce an actual headline. Now, the headline may exaggerate their actual findings. A poll may show a tiny movement within a margin of error. The headline says this: support surges, candidate collapses, Americans reject. And guess what? That is not always the analysis. Sometimes that's just nothing more than theater. Polls can create bandwagon pressure. If people hear most people support, they may start questioning their own view. If voters hear this candidate can't win, some people may stay at home. If consumers hear everyone is buying this or that, they may follow the crowd. That's where polling moves from measurement to actual influence. Polls themselves, within themselves, can be accurate, but they are not guaranteed to be accurate. The public needs to understand the difference between precision and truth. A poll can say candidate A has 48% and candidate B has 46%. But if the margin of error is plus or minus 3 points, that race may effectively be tied. Pew has warned that small changes in horse race polling are often overstated, especially when people treat tiny movements as meaningful shifts. MIT's explanation of margin of error notes that even under ideal sampling conditions, results can fall outside the margin of error by about 1 out of 20 times. And sampling error is not the only thing that can throw off poll results. That's important because many people think the margin of error covers everything, and it doesn't. It doesn't fully solve these: question wording, low response rates, bad turnout models, late changes in opinion, hidden voter behavior, social pressure, partisan response, partisan non response, poor weighting assumptions, bad interpretations by the media. That means a poll can be mathematically clean and still practically wrong. Listen, polling especially political polling, is where this gets especially serious. Because political polls are not just read by campaigns, they are consumed by voters. They influence donors. They shape media coverage. They affect morale. They can create panic, confidence, apathy, or momentum. This is why the public must stop treating a poll as prophecy. A poll is not a vote, y'all. A poll is not a command. A poll is not proof of righteousness. A poll is not proof of intelligence. A poll is not proof that everybody thinks a particular way. A poll is nothing more than a measured estimate at a particular time, under a particular method, among a particular sample, asking particular questions. That's a lot of particulars. Now, the American Association for Public Opinion Research has continued examining polling accuracy after major election cycles, including the 2024 election, because election polling has faced repeated scrutiny over misses, methodology, or whether errors lean in one direction or the other. That doesn't mean all political polls are garbage. It means that political polls need to be read carefully and humbly. Now, here's the media problem. The poll itself may be complicated. The media version is often simplified. That's where the danger grows. Now, a responsible report should tell people the following: who conducted the poll? Who paid for the poll? When was it conducted? How many people were surveyed? Was it adults, registered voters, likely voters, customers, members, or online users? What was the margin of error? How were the questions actually worded, which makes a difference? Was the poll weighted? Were the full results actually released? But national media often reduces the entire thing to one simple sentence. New poll shows Americans are divided. But what? Divided how? By what margin? On what wording? Among which people? Compared to what previous result? Within or outside the margin of error? Without that context, the poll becomes a weaponized headline. And when commentary panels start arguing over the headline, the public can be manipulated into believing the polls actually mean more than they actually mean. A polling group may be technically skilled but still influenced by its client, assumptions, audience, or ideological environment. Subjectivity can enter through the topic that was chosen, the wording of the question, the order of the questions, the answer choices that were offered, the population that was sampled, the weighting decisions, the timing of the release, the headline that was used, the results emphasized or ignored. Now, that doesn't mean that every pollster is dishonest, because they aren't, but it does mean that every poll should be examined fully. The public should not ask only, what did the poll say? The public should ask, how did the poll get there? Here's the question we should be asking ourselves: how do polls, or do polls, manipulate the public? Well, polls manipulate the public when they are used to create psychological effect. They can create inevitability. This candidate is unstoppable. This policy is inevitable. This culture, this culture change can't be resisted. Now, they can create hopelessness also. Your side is losing badly. Your values are outdated. People like you are in the minority. Or they can create false consensus. Everyone agrees. The country has moved on. Only extremists oppose this. Or they can create fear. Most Americans are afraid. Most voters believe the country is collapsing. Most people distrust their neighbors. Polls can also create social pressure. When people believe the majority thinks a certain way, some will conform just to avoid standing alone. That's why discernment matters. A mature public doesn't panic because of a poll. A mature public studies the poll, questions the poll, compares the poll, and then refuses to let the poll do its thinking for them. Now, here's what the public should understand about polling. And here's a practical checklist. When you hear a poll result, ask the following. Number one, who conducted it? Is it a respected research organization, a campaign connected group, a media outlet, a partisan firm, an advocacy group, or an online click survey? Number two, who paid for it? Money doesn't automatically corrupt a poll, but funding does matter. Number three, who was asked? Was it adults, registered voters, likely voters, party members, consumers, viewers, social media users? Four, how many people were polled? A small sample still is useful, but it does have its limitations. Number five, how were they contacted? Phone, online panel, text, mail, mixed method, random sample, opt in survey. Number six, what was the margin of error? If the difference is smaller than the margin of error, do not treat it like a decisive finding. Number seven, what exactly was the question? Now, never trust a poll unless you know how the question was asked. How the question was asked. Number eight, were the results weighted? Because weighting is normal, but it depends on assumptions about the population. Number nine, is this one poll or a trend? Now, one poll is merely a snapshot. Multiple high quality polls over time can show a trend. And number 10, how is the media framing it? The headline may be more dramatic than the actual data itself. All in all, polls are a sound way to gauge the public when they are transparent, well designed, properly interpreted, and humbly reported. But polls can become manipulation when they are selectively designed, selectively released, emotionally framed, or treated as unquestionable truth. A poll should inform the conversation. It should not control the conversation. A poll should help the public think. It should not tell the public what to think or how to think. A poll should be evidence. It should not be intimidation. Here are some questions we all need to take into consideration. Number one, are polls still useful in a society where many people no longer answer their unknown calls, distrust institutions, or hide their true opinions? Number two, when does a poll become less about measuring public opinion and more about manufacturing public opinion? Number three, should media outlets be required to explain poll methodology every single time they report on a poll? Number four, are political polls helping voters make informed decisions or are they discouraging independent thought? Number five, how much damage is done when a poll is reported without explaining the margin of error? Number six, can a poll be technically accurate but morally misleading? Number seven, why, oh, why do people trust poll numbers more than lived experiences, community conversations, or long term patterns? Number eight, are some polls designed to reveal truth while others are designed to create momentum? Number nine, should the public pay more attention to polling trends than single poll headlines? And number 10, What responsibility does the public have to become more statistically literate? Think about this. When someone says, a poll shows, the first response should be, which poll? Conducted by whom? Paid for by whom? Asked by whom? Asked how? Asked when? Asked with what wording? Reported with what agenda? Because the phrase, a poll shows, can be one of the most dangerous phrases in public conversation, especially when people do not ask a follow-up question. Think about this. Do not worship polls. Do not ignore polls. And please don't try to interpret polls. Think about this. A poll is not a flashlight. It is not the sun, y'all. It can illuminate part of the room, but it doesn't show everything. And depending on who's holding the flashlight, it may be pointed only to where they want you to look. The public needs discernment, not panic. Statistical literacy is not blind trust. Context, not headlines. Wisdom, not manipulation. And I'll close with this. When a poll is released, is it revealing what people think, or is it trying to tell people what they're allowed to think? That's where we have to be careful. Because once polling becomes a tool to pressure the public instead of understand the public, we're no longer dealing with information, we're dealing with influence. And on They Said What, we don't just ask what they said, we ask why they said it, who benefits from it, and whether or not the truth is being revealed or rearranged. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.